Welcome back to the Health Revival Show. Today we have Ben Azadi, who always feel like I have to say your last name's really big with, I don't know why, but I just feel that I have to do that. And so Becca and I met Ben in Dallas recently, but also previously at an event in Miami. And now we're going to be going to Miami for his book launch. So we're super excited to have you here and so excited for you to continue the message that you have and share that with people. So we don't want to spoil anything. Ben, just introduce yourself to our audience and let everybody know what's going on and all about your new book.
Yeah, well, thank you, Liz and Becca. Super grateful to be on your show. Love the setup. I was just telling you, amazing setup for those who are watching. This is incredible. My backstory, just real quick. I'm somebody who struggled with metabolic diseases for most of my life, pre-diabetes, obesity, both physical obesity and mental obesity. And I don't say that lightly, the mental part. I mean, I was suicidal. It was so bad. It was mental illness. Looking on the internet for ways to end my life. It was so bad. This is my early 20s. I was 23 years old. And I followed a standard American diet and went to my conventional doctor's appointments, and they didn't really have anything for me besides a medication. They weren't asking me, hey, what are you eating? Let's talk about your lifestyle. It was no, hey, we have a medication to help mitigate those symptoms. And it left me frustrated, like so many people who are trying to get well. And I wanted to just feel better. I was inflamed. My back kept going out. I remember I had to wear knee braces at the mall if I knew I was walking for more than an hour because my knees felt like they were going to buckle. And I was 23 years old, 250 pounds. So I actually took ownership and responsibility. I knew that God built my body to heal itself. I knew that there was a root cause to why I felt so awful. And it really first started with my mindset and getting into books from like Dr. Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor. And the thought piece really played a big role in my progress and my transformation was really getting aware of the thoughts I was having because my thoughts were actually holding me back. I kept having negative thoughts, thinking thoughts, and eventually I took ownership. I took responsibility, which I believe is the first step to great change. You take ownership, and the second you say I am responsible is the second you start making progress towards great change. And that's what I did. I took responsibility. I stopped being the victim of my history. I started to become the victor of my destiny. I started to move my body, eat real food, and I went through this incredible transformation where I lost 80 pounds in 9 months. I went from highest 34% body fat to at my lowest 6% body fat, completely changed my physical appearance. But what it did for my mental health was incredible. I achieved more important than a physical six pack was a mental six pack and what it did for my mental health. And, that was 17 plus years ago. I've kept the weight off. I've had a strong focus on metabolic health and the metabolism and a lot of the tools I teach, y'all teach as well, using these ancient healing strategies. So I've written 4 books in the past. This new book is my 5th book, and it's my first book actually with a major publisher, Hay House, and it's all about the metabolism. It's all about this concept called metabolic freedom, where essentially that is the goal. We want to have a metabolism that is thriving, it's built to thrive. God built the metabolism so perfectly. We just have been interfering with it. So the whole book talks about the first half of the book talks about what are those causes to metabolic dysfunction? What are the interferences? Let's identify those first and foremost. The second part of the book gets into the solutions, and then it's all wrapped together with a 30-day plan. So I'm excited for the book to get into the hands of your viewers and listeners, and I'm grateful that I get to talk about it with y'all today.
Yeah. We're so excited. And it's funny because when Liz and I first started working with people, it was all about like reverse dieting and eating more and getting more carbs in. And it worked for some people. But then there were a lot of people that like, I'm just gaining weight, or I'm really tired doing I don't feel as good doing these things. And it's thinking back to that point in time, I would bash keto, I would bash fasting. I was like, so bad for you as a female. It's gonna ruin your hormones. And now today, I'm like, oh, but this is growth. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong as long as you're willing to see what is going on internally and continue to learn. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit too around how you went about doing the transformation that you did of, losing all of this weight, and kind of what you learned in that process or what you learned before that process that made you want to take that path.
Yeah, and it's funny because now you're all in with keto and fasting and autophagy. I love it. And you're right. It's important to admit when you're wrong. I do it all the time. Unlearn and relearn, unlearn and relearn. And that's the sign of somebody who's constantly growing and progressing and not being dogmatic. And I have been dogmatic in the past. I know we all have to some extent. But yeah, when I lost the weight, I didn't necessarily do it the way that I would teach it today. It was a strong focus in the beginning on actually calories in versus calories out. I was exercising every day for 2 to 3 hours, and I was young. I was able to do that, and I know I was burning a ton of calories, and I was calculating my calories. And yeah, I started to lose weight back, and then I would exercise more, cut more, and then it would come off and then stall, and then it was just like a vicious cycle. So although I lost a ton of weight, I was one of those fit sick people. I looked great on the outside, but I was very unhealthy on the inside, and that's where I started to really explore other approaches for cellular health. And actually, my first approach after that was a vegan diet, a plant based diet. I was a vegan for 15 months, almost a year and a half, where I ate nothing but plants, and I thought that was like the health. This is back in 2012. I thought that was like the healthiest thing you can do. I read the book The China Study. It totally duped me. And after that, I was owning a CrossFit gym at this time, so I was training hard, doing a plant-based diet. And what's funny? What CrossFitters and vegans have in common, they can't shut up about being a CrossFitter and being a vegan, right? They always want to talk about it. So imagine a CrossFitting vegan. That was me, wearing shirts that said plant powered as I did, some snatches at the gym. Anyways, I realized, I don't feel that good. It was taking me a long time to recover in between workouts, which is a clear sign that your mitochondria are not adapting to the stress of exercise. I was fatigued. I was getting brain fog. And I knew that this plant-based approach was not working for me. And that's where I decided to do some lab work. And the lab work verified how I was feeling. Sometimes it doesn't, by the way. Sometimes the lab work takes many years to catch up to how you feel. But at this point, it did match how I felt. And then at this point, now it's 2013, I started to actually explore other modalities for healing. And that's actually where I got into ketosis and started studying ketosis and intermittent fasting and autophagy. Autophagy was not even a thing back then, but fasting was. And it really made a lot of sense to me. These are ancient healing strategies that we've done forever. And, when we have a metabolism that's only burning sugar, that is very problematic. We need to teach that metabolism to have flexibility, this metabolic freedom to burn fat and sugar back and forth. And that was burner as a plant-based vegan. So I went full in with a high fat diet, very low carbohydrate diet, and I started to feel incredible. I paired it with intermittent fasting, and even with that approach, I was very dogmatic. I thought keto is the answer forever. Men and women do it the same. Everybody needs to do it. You need to do it forever. And along the way, I realized that it's not the only tool in the shed. It's a powerful tool, but not the only tool in the shed. But that's kind of where the origination of keto and fasting came about for me.
Yeah.
So I'm curious with, where you stand today and writing this book. What's just like, and we'll get into some other things here, but what's the number one thing that you're like, gosh, if I could go back to like when I first started, as a practitioner and FDN, right? Like, what would I tell myself? Because there's so many things that you said here in terms of don't do it forever, that I think some people get so dogmatic about, like, no, that's just the approach and you just do it. And carnivore is the only way to live, for example, right?
Yeah.
So what's like the number one thing through this journey, writing this book, that you would say, I got that wrong, or man, I surprised that wasn't the only way?
Definitely what you just said, sticking to the same diet long term. The body loves change and adaptation. The number one priority for the human body is survival. It wants to survive. And when you create change with whether it's like diet, with fasting or feasting or a combination of both, you constantly challenge the body in a good way where it has to adapt to these changes, where it gets stronger and healthier. This is called a hormetic stress. And when you eat the same diet every single day or the same 8 foods, most people are eating the same foods over and over and over, this like mono sort of diet. Then what happens is your body hits a plateau. You decrease diversity in your gut, and you could gain weight because we like diversity, not just in our gut microbiome, but the changes are important. So some days are fasting days, some days are feasting days. Now, that's something that I believe in now. But to your point, Liz, back in the day, I thought it was, do keto forever, fast every single day. You could fast as much as you want, but there needs to be a customization to this. Men definitely do it differently than women. Y'all talk about this, and women who are going through different stages of their life do it differently. Meaning, Menstruating women do it differently than postmenopausal women. And they're all amazing tools, but they're not the only tools in the shed. There's so many different modalities, but they're very powerful when you use them the right way. What they all have in common, they're all stressors to the body. Ketosis is a stressor to the body. Fasting is a stressor to the body. All of these biohacks that we talk about, cold plunging, sauna, red light therapy, exercise, these are all stressors. It doesn't mean that they're bad for the body unless you're doing too much of these stressors, meaning too much keto, too much fasting, too much cold plunging. Then it is bad. You violate this principle called hormesis, which I actually talk about in the book. So for me, what has changed is I didn't understand hormesis back then. I didn't understand that stress is good as long as you adapt to it. Stress is very bad when you don't adapt to it. But intentionally applying stressors by changing your food, changing your schedule for fasting and feasting is the best way to gradually adapt to these stressors and get healthier and stronger.
Yeah. So who's a person that shouldn't be doing those things? Because I know a lot of women out there are going to be like, okay, well, I'm already stressed. And Liz and Becca talk about how bad stress is for me. And we talk about fight, flight, or freeze, right? And how do we get out of this cell danger response when
Yeah.
we're, just running around like our hair's on fire and being chased like by a bear or something. So maybe define that a little bit for the person out there. Like, how would you, and I'm sure you do this in the book, gradually maybe walk into some of these things, gradually, start to increase the amount of hours that you're fasting, watch for biofeedback. And then if you answer that question, in addition to saying, like, what are signs that, hey, this is too much of a stress? That's a bad stress. Now, this good stress has become not good for you.
Very important question. And I'm sure the viewer wants to know, okay, tell me, how do I know? Well, so page 29 of the book, and I know there's a lot of people listening, so they can't see this, but page 29 of the book has this illustration, and it shows how hormesis works. And it shows a graph of using exercise as the stress. And it shows, look, when you apply the right amount of exercise, you're in this hormetic zone where inflammation drops, antioxidant enzymes increase, you are healthier, you're burning fat, you feel good, you extend your lifespan when you're in that hormetic zone. For example, if you never have exercised, or let's say you haven't exercised in 10 years, you're sedentary, and you want to exercise, so you just start to walk, maybe do some body weight exercises, you start to apply mild stressors, you're staying in that hormetic zone where you adapt and get stronger. But if you go and do a CrossFit workout as that first workout, or an intense workout, you violate that, and all of a sudden you lose that curve, and now the opposite happens where you inflame yourself, you're unhealthy, and you actually shorten your lifespan. So you want to stay in your zone of hormesis. Everybody has a different ceiling of hormesis, and it all really relates to their stress bucket. We know that we have 70 trillion cells in our body. That means we have 70 trillion stress buckets inside of the body, and everybody has a different level of stress. And what I usually do is I'll illustrate where I'll hold up, and I talk about this in the book, but it'll make sense even if I explain it. I'll hold up two glasses of water. One glass is filled to the brim of water. The other glass is about a quarter full. The glass that's filled to the top, if I stress it, meaning if I shake it even a little bit, it'll start to spill because that stress bucket is overflowing. Meaning if you just do 18-hour fast or a 5-minute cold plunge and just stress your body just a little bit with a high stress bucket, you'll spill, meaning you have symptoms. The other person who has a low stress bucket, you could do an 18-hour fast, 24-hour fast. You could apply these biohacks like sauna, cold therapy, and stress it and shake it even more, and you're going to be just fine because your stress bucket is low. So we want to identify how full is your stress bucket. One of the best ways I think to track that is with heart rate variability is one method. And heart rate variability, of course, is giving you an idea of how your nervous system is adapting to stress. We have two primary branches to the nervous system. We have the fight or flight sympathetic branch, and then we have the rest and digest and detoxification parasympathetic branch. Somebody who has a high stress bucket is predominantly in that sympathetic branch, fight or flight, and they're parasympathetically suppressed. And they'll see that with a lower heart rate variability. And if you do see that, if you're tracking heart rate variability and you see it's very low, then you don't want to do too much fasting, too much cold plunging, too much sauna. You want to slowly start to apply these stressors as you adapt to them. And one of the most important things that you could pay attention to, because you asked the question, like, how do you know if you're adapting to the stressors? HRV is one thing, but also how do you feel the rest of the day after you've done a cold plunge, during an intermittent fast, after you've done sauna or exercise? You should feel better, more energized. You should get better sleep that night, wake up feeling refreshed. If you don't, if you feel wiped out and tired and your sleep was sacrificed and your HRV dropped and maybe your resting heart rate went up, you did too much. You need to build up that hormetic ceiling. I can tell you, you can do it. It takes some time. But one of the most incredible things I've done over the years to build up my hormetic ceiling is actually with melatonin. And I talk about this in the book. Melatonin, we think of it as a sleep agent, and it can help with sleep, but it's way more than that. It's one of the best ways to buffer oxidative stress and increase that hormetic zone. It's a very powerful antioxidant for the mitochondria, actually the most important antioxidant for the mitochondria. So there's many ways to look at this. How you feel and HRV, I think, are the two best gauges to see if you're adapting to these stressors.
Yeah. And if you don't know what HRV or how you can measure it, you can get an Aura ring. You can get, I think the Apple Watch
Yes.
to some extent will measure
Yep.
it. If you got to
Fitbit.
wear,
Yep.
yep. So there's lots of cool little gadgets out there that can help you out with it. I would love to talk through why this has become such a problem for people, I think, because, right, we talk about stress, and there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not that stressed, but I have all these symptoms. I can't lose weight. I'm not sleeping well. And I think the mental emotional piece can be a big piece, but I think a lot of people underestimate the environmental piece.
Mm.
So, like, all the things we're exposed to on a day-to-day basis that are very different than what we were exposed to even 30 years ago. And I know that you have something that you give out at a lot of your talks that I love, which is a seed oil allergy card.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to chat a little bit on what you've seen with researching for your books and obviously in practice and those types of things that I think that people underestimate that are creating an inflammatory situation cellularly, and ultimately why we probably have to work a little bit harder at some of the things to accomplish health than maybe we did 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah, great point, Becca. You're right. There are three different areas of stress. You said the mental, emotional piece. That's one area. Then we have the physical stress, which could be like overtraining or an injury. And then we have the chemical stress, which is the piece you're talking about, which is the environmental toxicity part. I think this is the biggest piece here when it comes to metabolic disease. I dedicated an entire chapter to it because it's that important. Chapter 5 is in how environmental toxins make you sick and inflamed, because we live in the most toxic world than ever before. To your point, 20, 30 years ago, yeah, we had a lot of toxins, but to this point, like in 2025, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. We can't escape it. And these toxins are filling up the stress bucket at a dramatic, significant pace. There are two classifications of toxins that I talk about in chapter 5: obesogens and diabetogens. So, obesogens are these endocrine disrupting chemicals, EDCs, that are in our environment. They're in plastic water bottles, they're in our food supply, they're in our water supply, they're in the air from airplane and jet fuel, they're everywhere. And these obesogens, they're lipophilic, meaning they're fat-loving chemicals. They love your body fat. So what happens is when they enter your body through the food, drinking, or even on your skin through the stuff we're using for like lotions and makeup or even cleaning supplies. When these toxins enter your body, there's a pathway that gets turned on in the body called PPAR gamma. And PPAR gamma is a survival pathway, meaning these toxins, when they enter the body, the innate intelligence, the inner physician within the body, does not want these toxins to freely circulate in the bloodstream and enter vital organs to kill you. I said it earlier, the number one priority for the body is survival. So this pathway, PPAR gamma, gets turned on to shuttle, kind of like what insulin does to shuttle glucose, but to shuttle these toxins into your fat cells because they're lipophilic, they're fat loving, and there's a lot of room in your fat cells. And guess what? If there's no room in your fat cells, it will actually increase the size of your adipocytes, your fat cells. And if that gets filled, it creates new fat cells. These are how toxins make us sick and inflamed. And then here's what happens: you go on an extreme diet or a calorie counting approach, cutting calorie approach, and you start to burn a lot of fat. And then you dump these toxins, and then you're recirculating them back into the bloodstream. And now the metabolism realizes, hey, every time we burn fat, we dump toxins. We don't want these toxins in the bloodstream. We can't burn these toxins. We just absorb them. I'm going to slow down fat burning, and it creates weight loss resistance. That's one classification. The other classification is a newer type of classification of toxins called diabetogens, which are toxins that actually disrupt the beta cell function in our pancreas, which triggers prediabetes and diabetes. As a matter of fact, there's a study I referenced in the book that showed 33% of all type 2 diabetes is toxicity related. 33%. That is the highest rate it has ever been. So, what can we do about this? We want to keep our detox pathways open. Becca and Liz talk a lot about the importance of liver health and these other downstream detox pathways, the liver, the gut, the kidney, the colon, the lymphatic system. You want to work on keeping those open so you're able to eliminate these toxins. But if you have a huge overload of toxins, you're going to have to work on really clearing those, because a lot of people are struggling with their health because they have a high toxicity load. And there's some simple things you can do that I talk about in the book, like using glass water bottle like I have here instead of plastic water bottles, using glass Tupperware instead of plastic Tupperware, using wooden cutting boards instead of plastic cutting boards, because there's a bunch of microplastics as you cut your food on plastic cutting boards that go into the food. So use wood. Don't microwave anything that's plastic. Don't microwave anything in general. Saying no to cash register receipts is a good idea, and they contain 1,000 times more BPA in a cash register receipt than canned food. So yeah, you just want to be aware of it. I know we can't avoid it, so that's why you want to keep those detox pathways open. And as you clear those toxins, you reduce your stress bucket, you're able to do more ketosis and fasting and all these biohacks, and you actually feel better, not worse.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point here. And I actually just ran a mycotox test for one of my clients who'd been really struggling. And the first thing that popped up was really high levels of BPA. One thing I want to call out here is tea bags, because people don't realize that the tea bag gives you so much. I forgot the specific number, but it's a crazy amount of plastic that you're drinking in that cup. And she was doing multiple cups per day, right? Supporting liver health and all these things. And she's right, doing the right things, but we need the vessel to be loose leaf tea and a glass container for seeping. One thing that I would be curious to know, and I just pulled up some research around this, I got to dive into this, but you mentioned these diabetogens, impacting like the pancreas. And this is where I would think acute pancreatitis, maybe pancreatic cancer, right? Some of these things that people don't often think about. Because I've gotten actually just this week 3 messages regarding pancreatitis. And I think that we have to go back and look at why this is happening, instead of just saying, well, I'll take some NSAIDs, probably make some things worse, and then I'll take some digestive enzymes, which might help. But curious, within your book, do you talk about that at all in terms of how this relates to other diseases and cancer from the diabetogens?
Yeah, so that is very interesting about the 3 messages you got with pancreatitis. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a connection there with toxicity. It just makes sense, because we know it triggers the prediabetes and it disrupts the beta function. I don't get into that specific link between pancreatitis and toxicity, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a strong link there. I do talk about the cancer part. Yes, I talk about the oxidative stress that's caused by this high toxic load. I think, the first half of the book talks about all the problems that lead to metabolic dysfunction, being a sugar burner, poor sleep, high stress levels, poor circadian rhythm, processed foods. But the number one thing are these toxins. If I had to choose one, it would be these toxins. It's the biggest threat we have that leads to cancer, leads to heart disease, because of the amount of inflammation, cellular inflammation that they cause. So that should be a main focus for all of us these days. It's interesting because I do make the point in the book that when we look at Italy, for example, and other countries in Europe, but I targeted Italy in the book, their lifespan is longer than ours. Our lifespan in the US on average is around 77 years. In Italy, it's over 80, 81, 82. And Italy also has a fraction of the diseases that we have: heart disease, cancer, obesity, diabetes. And it's not that they have more gyms. They actually have a fraction of the gyms that we do here. So they're not working out more. They do walk more, but what do they have that we don't have? They've banned a lot of these toxins from their food supply. They have strict regulations on glyphosate, red dyes. 2016, they banned a lot of these toxins, yet we still allow them in our food supply. And we're killing ourselves slowly. It is causing cancer. It is causing heart disease. It's causing oxidative stress. It's aging you faster. So that should be the focus for everybody listening today. Do some easy stuff, like do an audit in your house, throw away anything you feel is suspect that has chemicals. Start with your detergent, because you're essentially breathing in your clothes and your bed sheets 24/7 a day, 24/7 per day. So get some non-toxic cleaning supplies, detergent, and then go to your makeup, your toothpaste, and kind of just go from there.
So I just got to ask, who do you like? We use Truly Free because I
Same.
think they're fantastic. They're affordable, which I so appreciate. Honestly, as you mentioned, the food dyes. St. Patrick's Day was yesterday, and we just
Mhm.
made Rice Krispies green for school. And a lot of people, even though I shared, they do make not food dye like coloring. It's actually from food. So like it's like beets and some different stuff. But it's like $38 on
Wow.
Amazon, right? For that little 4-pack. And I got these because, we got to do the fun things for holidays. So it was back from Christmas. I got this little 4-pack from Watkins. But, it's very hard for the person who's also trying to put their toxicity loaded levels here to say, I wouldn't spend $38 on that because then get the food coloring for $1 at the store. It's ridiculous how much also some of these healthier options are for individuals. But I would agree with you there. I don't. What do you use for your cleaning and laundry? Just curious.
Yeah, that's crazy. 30 times, 38 times more to get the non-toxic variety. That's insane. I also use Truly Free, formerly my green fills. I get them on auto ship, but seventh generation is a good available resource at Whole Foods. So if you get seventh generation, but I do use Truly Free. I've been using them since my Greenfield days for like 5 or 6 years.
Awesome.
I love it. So I want to go after the concept of eating more frequently throughout the day because I also see many, many women run into the world of I don't eat very much during the day and then I just have like a dinner, right? They're snacking throughout the day. They're having their coffee with their oat milk creamer. I actually gave a talk at my church this weekend and I mentioned that. And one of the ladies goes, "Oh no." And oat milk creamer is basically sugar. Like it's so I would love for you to address that because I think that has been a long standing in the bodybuilder world and who I would say in the bodybuilding world, like you're stimulating insulin. Insulin can help with growth. And maybe in the bodybuilding world, it can serve to get more muscle, not metabolic health. But all of the females out there that are like, well, for my metabolism, my hormones, I was told to eat every 2 to 3 hours to keep my metabolism firing. Can we please talk about
Yeah,
this?
yeah, of course. Yeah, oat milk. Oat milk, by the way, you're correct. It's a big glucose spike. Not to mention that most oat milk is loaded with glyphosate, another toxin that we allow here in the US. Snacking and grazing, I used to be a big believer of that. I used to think the same thing, keep the metabolism revved up. In reality, the metabolism doesn't even work in speeds, it's efficient or inefficient. And a lot of people think that their metabolism slows as they age. And there's actually a really fascinating study that I put in the book that really shows that this doesn't really happen. It showed that our metabolisms don't have any significant changes until you reach age 60. And at that point, they show an average decline or inefficiency of about 0.7% every year after the age of 60. But here's why. Here's why that happens, according to the study. And I agree with the study: loss of muscle mass. Okay. So y'all are, of course, educating on muscle mass, the importance of that. And I'm all on board with muscle mass is something I'm working on this year myself. However, being a bodybuilder and performing at the gym and getting gains is not the same thing. It's not synonymous with health and longevity. It's really not. So, yeah, snacking and grazing may help with your performance in the gym and maybe some PRs, but it's probably aging you faster. And I say probably, I'm being nice. It's aging you faster. Okay, it's not probably. It is aging you faster than anybody you know. You're constantly spiking glucose and insulin. You're teaching your metabolism to be inefficient and burn. And when you do that, that is a destructive path that will lead towards metabolic disease. As a matter of fact, that is the first domino to fall, being a sugar burner. When you have high levels of insulin, that will trigger a cascade of metabolic diseases, not overnight, not even in a year. But on average, the studies are showing you could have full blown insulin resistance for 6 to 14 years with perfect blood sugar levels and perfect A1C levels because your pancreas is just shouting out, screaming, producing insulin until it cannot anymore. And the receptor sites for insulin go deaf to the screams of insulin. And all of a sudden, your blood sugars rise, and now you have a problem on your hands. We are not designed to snack and graze. We're designed to feast and to fast, to feast and to fast. Every time you snack, even if it's a healthy snack, you raise glucose and insulin, you start the digestive processes, which robs energy from your brain. It takes a lot of energy to process food. So now you're diverting energy from just being productive to digesting food. And you're teaching your metabolism to be stuck burning sugar. So you could still get the your calorie requirements, protein requirements, as long as you just have it in a certain eating window. That could be 6 hours, 8 hours, even as maximum of 12 hours. But 6 to 8 hours seems to be a good window in terms of getting all your calories and meals. And when you focus on high quality food, whole food, protein, and fat, there's no need to snack. You're full, you're satiated. So we need to get away from this whole grazing thing. When you graze and snack, it's the opposite of metabolic freedom. It's a metabolic prison, and it ages you fast. Yes, you might make some gains at the gym, but know that you're aging yourself faster. The average bodybuilder dies 12 years younger than the average person because they're stuck in mTOR, which is growth, growth, growth. mTOR and growth is amazing in spurts, but grazing and snacking and being in mTOR and growth all the time, not good.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. It's just like people are like, I'm eating regularly. The best quote, I eat healthy,
I exercise.
I exercise, but nothing's working. And I'm like, I bet you're not as healthy as you think. And it's hard because so often we have clients that come in that do eat very healthy foods, right? They eat really balanced. They aren't eating tons of starches or gluten or things of that nature. They're exercising and their A1C is at 5.8. And we know things have been going on. And it's also why we test fasted insulin with every single one of our clients, because
Awesome.
it's like, you're going to see that go up before you see your blood sugars go up. And so it's helping to understand, hey, every time you take that bite of your kid's food or we've talked about, you don't have to eat less. You just have to eat less often.
That's right.
And that is where you can build that true metabolic flexibility. So thank you for going through that in such a
Can you
concise way.
can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about the insulin resistance, 6 to 14 years, right? So you said they can be full blown with healthy blood sugars for 6 to 14 years. Tell the person listening, what are the signs they're going to look out for besides metabolic, weight loss resistance that they would be seeing? Should they be like, we love Keto Mojo? Should they, be doing insulin checking more frequently, or like, what are some other markers that you would tell them to kind of look out for?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, what you two do Becca just said the fasting insulin, that's the most important thing I would do right away. Get a blood test, a fasting insulin blood test, which is very cheap. Insurance usually doesn't cover it, but it's very cheap, $30 or so. And look at your numbers. You want to see your fasting insulin in the single digits. Ideally, between 3 and 7 is optimal sensitive insulin levels. If it's over 10, and that reference range, by the way, on that report is between like 3 and 25, 3 and 28, which is a shame because if you're 17 or 22 on that report, a conventional doctor will not flag it as being a problem. That is insulin resistance. So you want to look at your numbers first and foremost. Go get that test. Make the case for it in the book. And then there are some signs, though. Keto Mojo is great. I talk about testing blood sugar and ketones in the book. Some people, there are some barriers to entry, as you both know. Not everybody wants to prick their finger. Not everybody's on board with that. But if you are open to that, for sure, look at your blood sugar levels during a fast. You want it to be between 70 and 90 milligrams per deciliter. Look at your blood sugars after eating. 2 hours after eating, it should be back to where it was before you started eating. Those are great. And if you're looking to be in ketosis and burn fat, you want to see those ketones at 0.5 millimoles per liter or higher. So that gives you clear metrics to see if you're burning fat instead of sugar. Now, there's some signs, though, that you could pay attention to. There's a quiz I put into the book. It's a sugar burning quiz. And if you answer yes to at least 3 of the questions that I asked in the book, those are signs that you have insulin resistance in your sugar burner. So some of the questions that I ask are, do you have more than 20 pounds of extra weight on your body? That's the first question. Do you have skin tags anywhere on your body? Do you have brown patches around your armpit and neck area? Do you feel tired after eating a meal? Do you snack in between your meals? And do you eat a high carbohydrate breakfast? So if you answer yeah to 2 or 3 of those, chances are you're a sugar burner. But what happens is when you transition to burning fat, it's like a whole new world. You just have more energy, less inflammation, less brain fog. Your brain actually gets turned on because ketones are amazing for the brain, and you start to now lose weight. But you're losing weight because you're getting healthy. Here's where the old calories in, dogmatic approach, old traditional way of thinking has it so wrong because yeah, calories matter. They're not that important. Their premise when somebody's teaching you to just be in a calorie deficit, and look, I used to teach it for so many years. Their premise is this premise: we need to lose weight to get healthy. That is their premise. We need to get you to lose weight to get healthy. The body doesn't work that way. The metabolism works the complete opposite way. We get healthy to lose weight. And when you are doing ketosis, when you're burning fat, when you're practicing all these things we're talking about here, your body's getting healthy. You're lowering inflammation, which is balancing your hormones. And as a side effect, the weight comes off. But the best part about doing it this way, the weight stays off. You're not rebounding, you're not yo yo dieting. So, yeah, those are some signs to pay attention to when it comes to sugar burning. But I think the most important thing is go get a fasting insulin test done so you have your baseline and then go from there.
Yeah, it's really, I think, negligent for conventional medicine not to run a fasting insulin. Like you said, it's very cheap. And we see it all the time for people. I actually just had a person who was doing keto, who was really high with insulin, and A1C was above the pre-type 2 diabetes range. And I was like, we need more data because we're
Mm.
not getting into ketosis. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing here. I think that, um, yeah, anyways,
And
it's unfortunate.
they don't run that test, the fasting insulin, because there's not a medication for
Mhm.
insulin. That's why. Like even if they see that it's a problem, but we don't have a medication for that, so why should we run it? There's no treatment we could give you here.
Yeah, I deal with this a lot, and I know you talk a lot about bile, especially if people are going into higher fat, right? Bile acids, that's a marker that we can run to tell us, like, what do we, maybe need to do? Because what we also know is that for liver dysfunction, it's going to be years, before you start to see your elevations in cholesterol or your liver enzymes elevated. The damage is being done silently, right? So it's then again looking at bilirubin and other markers and saying, okay, what are our symptoms here? And if you are somebody who's trying to go into a ketogenic diet and you don't feel well with that, we got bigger problems that we have to address. Don't just shy away from it. Like, no, we want the body to be able to get into a ketogenic state and burn fat. I think that that is something that I, again, wish that, and we'll have to keep talking about this, people would understand just because maybe your body doesn't respond initially the way that you want it to. Like, I didn't drop 7 pounds in the first week on keto like my friend did. No, I actually got more tired. I get the keto flu. Well, you might need to push through because this is a sign that we are releasing, like you mentioned, those fat cells are releasing these toxins. We want to sequester them and get them out of the body.
Yeah.
Bile is really important for that. So if you're listening to this, dive into the book, get your hands on this book because there's, I'm sure, an amazing protocol and kind of what to do with symptoms, but elaborate to a little bit more on what people should do as they're making these changes if they don't feel well. Because you talked about the bucket, right? Like, okay, I start to do a little bit of fast and I get symptoms. Support drainage and detoxification pathways, increase hydration and electrolytes. Like, how do you kind of inch people in who are really, let's say, severely dysfunctional? And I know that's a bad word to use, but like, their toxic burden is really, really high.
Yeah, no, it's important because most people do have a high toxic burden in this day and age. So you're spot on, Liz. The bile part is important, and I know you lectured about that at a Rachel Shear's event, and you teach it very well. Hepatic biliary sludge, right? Where everybody has this toxic sludge of bile built up in the liver through, of course, processed carbohydrates, medications, toxins, alcohol throughout our life. As you mentioned, it happened throughout the years, and bile is important for so many reasons. Is of course it helps with detoxification, but in terms of ketosis, when you're eating more fat, bile acts like a detergent to break down these dietary fats, so you absorb and use those fat soluble vitamins. And if you have thick, sluggish bile, like most people do, now you're starting to increase healthy fats, and you can't break it down. Well, you're not going to feel good. You're going to have loose stool, diarrhea. You're going to feel off, and you might blame keto or saturated fat as the issue. But the issue is we need to focus on the cause of this. A lot of people think, and I don't know if you get this, both Liz and Becca, but a lot of people think that because gallbladder, the removal of the gallbladder is one of the top surgeries in the U.S., and they think that they don't have bile because they don't have a gallbladder. But people don't understand that gallbladder is the storage house for the bile. Your liver is still producing the bile, right? So you're still producing bile, you just don't have a storage house. So you actually have to be even more diligent with supporting the liver if you don't have a gallbladder. But it can be done. There's just some different considerations here. So bitter, rich foods are amazing for the liver. I always say bitter for the liver, and I have a whole list of them in the book. Of course, we have apple cider vinegar, lemons, limes, radicchio, artichokes, coffee is an amazing bitter as well. Real olive oil is an amazing bitter. So eating more bitter rich foods to stimulate that bile production is very important. You can do things like coffee enemas and castor oil packs, real detoxification metrics and or methods, and also using binders at night. As you know, Liz, the liver, which I call the soccer mom organ because it does everything for the body like a soccer mom. The liver goes through this, Chinese medicine calls it the liver time between 2, 3, 4 a.m. overnight. And it's dumping a lot of bile, it's detoxifying. So maybe taking like a binder right before bed to start to collect those toxins as your liver starts to dump it, because otherwise it'll recycle it. That's another reason why a lot of people wake up at 3 a.m. wired and tired. It's this liver dump happening. But yes, you want to support the liver. A lot of people have a sluggish liver, and just start with the bitters and kind of go from there and ease your way into this transition from burning sugar to burning fat. At the end of the book, which is the 30-day plan, at the end of chapter 12, excuse me, I give the entire protocol. Okay, here's what you do starting week 1. I give you exactly what to do the first 7 days, and then we go into give you every day what to do for 30 days. And I transition you slowly as we lower the carbs slowly, increase healthy fats and protein slowly, increase electrolytes and minerals, because I want to transition you from burning sugar to burning fat without some of these hiccups and side effects like loose stools, diarrhea, keto flu you mentioned. You don't have to go through all of that. You could transition in 7 days without any of that. I've taken thousands of students through this protocol, and they've transitioned when they follow the protocol. And if you're not new to keto, if you've already been doing keto and fasting, there's an advanced protocol for you to follow as well. So the key thing to remember, slowly transition with your lowering of carbohydrates and increasing fats, support the liver with bitters and maybe other methods, keep your electrolytes and minerals up. And it's not a race. It's your pace, your race. It's not, you're not racing against anybody else. So take as long as you need. If you've been a sugar burner for 20, 30, 40 years, you can't expect to completely transform your health in a week. It's going to take some time. And sometimes you might be losing weight from your organs, meaning you might be pulling fat from your organs, but your overall weight's not changing. Just have the faith and keep going with the plan. Keep reducing your toxicity bucket, and you'll eventually get there.
Yeah. And, I actually just made a reel on this about how a lot of people think, like Liz was saying, they think they're doing keto and they're gaining weight or they're not losing weight or they feel worse. And it's like the most metabolically dangerous diet you could probably be on is thinking you're eating keto, but eating too many carbs with it.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're high calorie and you got carbs in the mix and you're not flipping to fat burning. And now it's a total disaster. And so that's why tracking blood sugars, tracking ketones, making that 3-to-1 ratio, right, of fats to protein, making sure you're not eating enough protein or eating too much protein potentially. If you truly are trying to do this to get your body into a fat adapted, keto adapted state for a healing benefit, right? So I'd love to talk a little bit before we finish up on the autophagy concept and how some people believe fasting is not necessary for autophagy and what autophagy is and this, prehistoric built-in capability of the body to heal itself. But because of the onslaught of things we've encountered in life, whether it's stress, toxins, chemicals, all of these things, how our body is not very, some people genetic, are not very good at this healing process and flipping into this healing process. So can you touch a little bit on autophagy and,
Of
what you
course.
need to do?
Yeah, no, of course. And it is true. You could get autophagy even without fasting. You get it through strength training and burst training, HIIT training. You could get it through what's called senolytics, which are certain ingredients like certain mushrooms, turmeric, green tea, olive oil. Olive oil is interesting. It actually creates autophagy in the brain with oleocanthals. But my favorite method to get it is through fasting. I love getting autophagy through fasting. It's a powerful way to enhance autophagy. And for those who don't know, autophagy is this cellular cleanup process. If you follow Liz and Becca on Instagram, you could see them talking about it. It's a cellular cleanup process that I do talk about in the book. There's a whole chapter on fasting in the book. The analogy that I always give on autophagy that people just love because it helps them really understand how this works is a refrigerator. I always talk about this refrigerator. We all have a fridge in our kitchen. If we open up that refrigerator, we see groceries, of course, that all have an expiration date on them. And what would happen if we let all the groceries inside of the fridge expire beyond that expiration date? And instead of throwing them into the trash, these expired groceries, we just kind of shove them towards the back of the fridge, inside of the drawers, like just shove it in there. We buy new groceries, put it in front of the old groceries, and we close that door and come back a week later and open up that door. That's going to be a toxic environment. Disease will manifest in that environment. I think we could all agree to that. Well, the human body is just like that refrigerator. We have cells, mitochondria, proteins that all have expiration dates on them. There's about 60 billion cells that need to go through this cleaning process every single day. Autophagy is the process of getting rid of those expired groceries from your body, cleaning it out, like Pac-Man going within your cells, cleaning it out. And the body is so magnificent and so sophisticated that the autophagy part is aimed to fix the cell. Meaning, if you have mitochondria that are inflamed and not burning fat well, then autophagy could fix the mitochondria to teach that mitochondria to burn fat, and now you burn fat more efficiently. But if the cell and the mitochondria have no function, it's called a senescent cell, a zombie cell, then instead of cleaning it up, it actually, the innate intelligence sends a signal to get rid of that cell. This is a healthy way to get rid of cell. It's called programmed cell death, apoptosis. It's a healthy way to do this. And it gets rid of that senescent cell, and then it creates a stem cell, a new cell that is used for whatever the body needs it for, the liver, the eyes, the brain. And all this is happening during a fast. And the question I always get asked, okay, when does this happen during a fast? When does autophagy get turned on? Well, autophagy is always happening in the body. There's always some degree of autophagy. Now, during 16, 17 hours of a fast, you are enhancing this autophagy process. Now, the more metabolically healthy you are and the more active you are during the fast, the faster it will happen during the fast. So you might get this increase in autophagy at the 10-hour mark or 12-hour mark. And if you're really metabolically damaged or challenged, it might happen 20 or 24 hours in. But on average, 16 to 17 hours into this fast, you get a ramp up of this cleaning process. And it's one of the most important ways to prevent diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, and to get rid of these cells that are not burning fat well, to get rid of these toxins we spoke about. So I'm all in with autophagy. I know you are as well, Liz and Becca. So that's how it works.
Yeah. No, I love this. And I think, like we said in the beginning, this is not something you do all day, every day, 24/7. Like, because I think that the autophagy world and the fasting world can get really enticing because you feel great when you do it at first. And you're like, oh, but now I get used to not having food in my stomach. And that feels good too. I feel really lean and skinny and it's great. And then it can go too far.
Yeah.
And,
I've been there myself.
yeah, absolutely. And I've battled that in the past few months of a lot of, protocols to try and get ketones moving and all of these things that my body, your body ends up resisting it at some point. The concept of mitochondrial spinning has been a new one that I have been exploring more and more, because you do too much hormesis and the mitochondria gets going too fast. And now you're pedal to the metal and the engine's exhaust all over the place. And that oxidative stress builds up now. And I think everything in life is a bell curve. Like almost everything you can apply a bell curve to. It is great until it's not great. So to kind of round out, how would you suggest building this into your life, like into a year or into a lifestyle, utilizing fasting and ketosis and all of these great methods to help keep health at the forefront? What do you advise, or what's like a 10,000-foot view piece of advice that you would give someone on how to apply this, but not over apply it?
Yeah, that's a very important. To your point, I've also did too much fasting, too much stressors, and there needs to be a balance. We talked about mTOR earlier. mTOR is not bad unless you're always an mTOR. mTOR is that anabolic row, and then autophagy is the opposite. So there's this inverted relationship between mTOR and autophagy. The magic is in both. Anabolic, anabolic, catabolic, but catabolic in a good way where you're cleaning stuff out. If you're too catabolic, you lose too much muscle, you weaken your immune system. That's too much fasting, right? So for most people, the first step is to go from burning sugar to burning fat, because 93% of Americans are sugar burners. They're in a keto deficiency. So the first step is to burn fat. And the second step is to then pair, once you're fat adapted and burning fat, then you start practicing different fasting schedules. Not the same one every day. You mix it up. There's 16-8, 18-6, there's 14-10, there's, of course, 24-hour fast, and that's more advanced. But you start to pair that now with a fasting schedule, and you start to first work on the metabolism and become an efficient fat burner. You get keto adapted. And at that point, then you start to experiment with what I call metabolic flex days or keto flex days, where you intentionally bring up carbs, no fasting, have an mTOR day. And keep in mind, to Becca's point earlier, a higher carb day is a low fat day. We don't want high carbs and high fat. It's a low fat day. And I know I'm trying to sell a book, but in the 30-day plan, I have it all built out for you. Like the fourth week here, the last 7 days in the plan, I incorporate 2 metabolic flex days. I show you exactly how to do it. So, to answer your question, Becca, the first step is to burn fat instead of sugar, experiment with fasting, change the schedule up. You could even manipulate protein and calories. There's many ways to do this and find your groove. That's metabolic freedom. And you could find that groove in 30 days. I had a guy, I know we're wrapping up here, but I had a guy, John Miller, who I actually brought on my podcast because he was so inspirational. I posted a YouTube video last year on this 30-day plan. I'm like, I'm going to make a YouTube video. I just wrote this plan. Let me just see how it goes. And it went viral on YouTube. But this guy, John Miller, followed the plan. And I made the bold statement as the title of that YouTube video: you lose 20 pounds in 30 days following this method. And it's the exact plan here. It's actually more detailed in the book. And I got a lot of hate for that. 20 pounds in 30 days. Yeah, right. And this guy lost 44 pounds in 30 days following this plan, John Miller. Now, he was really overweight and he's lost even more weight since that, but it works. And he has reported to me and he put it on the podcast interview. He felt amazing. Energy levels were amazing. He's like doing different things now. So it works really well. Just follow the plan and it'll work for you, because I've seen it work for so many people.
Yes. And I would not normally promote something like that, but Ben's a unique person, and we love Ben.
I know you're taking care of people.
Yes.
You're not writing something stupid that is, and honestly, a lot of it is what we practice ourselves.
Yeah.
I've been doing some fasting right now. I'm getting ready to do a liver gallbladder flush actually tomorrow night into Thursday. And I was telling Becca, I'm like, yesterday and today eating like low fat, higher carb, not fasting. I'm like, I want to go back because I feel more satisfied and full and whatever. But we understand the methodologies, and I know that it's going to help so many people. So we're really excited to share this, and we'll see you in Miami here in a few weeks. Probably this will air the day that we're coming, because it'll be May 7th.
Yes.
We're excited. Thank you so much for being here. And if you guys are listening, follow Ben on Instagram, see the amazing work that he has done, get a copy of this book, and share this episode. So thank you, Ben, and have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, if I could just say real quick before we sign out here, we have a special gift for those who get the book, by the way. We have a bonus. There's a link. I didn't tell you about it, so it's my bad, but it's metabolicfreedombook.com. If you order the book there, and it's available on hardcover, Kindle, Audible, I narrated the Audible. When you order the book on that page, you'll go back to that page after you order the book, and then just put your name, email, and order number. And we have an entire course for free on the metabolism that I built out, that we give away, and exclusive interviews in that course with Dr. Pompa, Dr. Jason Fung, Gary Brecka, Megan Ramos, and Cynthia Thurlow. So all that's free when you go to metabolicfreedombook.com. And Liz and Becca, I'm very grateful for both of you. I'm excited to bring you both on my podcast and hang out with you and celebrate in Miami with both of you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.